What's up, guys? In this episode of Donnie Graham Builds, I'm going to show you how to do a beautiful DIY ShipLap wall on a budget. Let's get to work. All right, so this is a fairly simple project. You just need a handful of, well, some beginner tools, some slightly more advanced, but if you don't have the tools, just borrow them. I always tell my friends if they ever need a tool for a project, especially if it's a one-off, just to ask me and I'm happy to loan them out because I want to see people building and doing things themselves. So ask your dad, your grandfather, your cousins, the lady down the street who works in a garage, whoever it is, I'm sure somebody can let you borrow these, or worst case scenario, you can rent them from a box store. So what we're gonna need is a drill, a jigsaw, an 18 gauge brad nailer, and an air compressor. All of these are Makita, clearly by the color on the labeling. I'm not super crazy about really one brand over another. Just buy quality and then stick to that battery platform so you're not wasting money with a bunch of different batteries and chargers. So the basic principle here is instead of using the expensive ShipLap material from the box stores,
A ShipLap.
it usually runs $14 to $19 a board. We're gonna use 1/4 inch plywood. I ripped these down to 6-inch strips and I'm going to set them at the bottom and work my way up. Now, in my particular situation, I'm already halfway through a remodel. If you want to see the rest of this, I've got 2 other videos, both on installing laminate floors and on turning a single vanity into a dual vanity. So I'll have links to those below. But in this case, we're going to start at the bottom, work our way up, and I'm just going to use a couple of yardsticks as spacers in between each one. I'm going to attach with construction adhesive on the back and then a couple of brad nails through the board into the studs, and I have all my studs marked with tape, and I'll line those up with my laser level. If you don't have a laser level, use a stud finder and just use something long and straight like a drywall square or a level to get a nice straight line so you can follow where your studs are so you have good secure boards on the wall. So let's get started. We're gonna work from the bottom up, and just like tiling, it's really important to get that first bottom low level, even if your floor isn't level. So let's take a look at that. All right, so you can see I had to notch out around my water supplies. This will eventually be covered by vanity, so don't worry about those. But I do have my laser level set at the top of where I want this bottom board, and there's a good little gap on the ground. The gap actually won't matter because we're gonna put a trim, we're gonna put a baseboard. Actually, we're gonna trim out this entire wall, so the gaps around any seams on the outside walls won't matter, which would be great. But you can see the floor does have a little bit of a slope to it. So as I go, like I said, I'm gonna hit construction adhesive on the back, and then I'm gonna brad nail each of these in, and I'll put my last connecting piece over there, and that'll give me a nice solid foundation to build off of going up. I have a lot of random notching and holes to drill for all these fixtures, which is fine. But again, to stay consistent, we're gonna use 2 yardsticks in between each board to keep our spacing dead on all the way up. And as long as we set this first board perfectly level, everything else will follow. So let's get this one attached and get rolling. Okay, now when you're buying your materials, I used about 2.5 sheets of 1/4 inch plywood and about 4 bottles or 4 tubes of construction adhesive or liquid nails or whatever particular brand you're going to use. I would say go ahead and buy 1 or 2 extra tubes than you think you're going to need. They're not very expensive, and the time you save by not having to run back to the store for the last 2 or 3 boards is definitely worth it, and you can always save it and use it later. Now, I worked my way up the wall, again, using these yardsticks as spacers. The yardsticks are actually a 1/4 inch thick, so if you want a thinner spacer in between, you can either use an offcut of your plywood, or you can just nab a couple of paint sticks from the paint station at your local big box store. Those are free, and they're an 1/8 inch thick, which means you'll have 1/8 inch spacing all the way up the wall. Now, this is pretty much rinse and repeat. One tip I will add in is go ahead, get the construction adhesive on, set it on the wall without worrying too much about your spacing, and then kind of shift the wall up and down, and that'll give the adhesive a chance to collapse and really kind of connect those 2 pieces as you put your spacer in and get that ideal consistent spacing. Now, in my case, I am working on my bathroom vanity wall, so I need to work around water supplies, drainage, outlets, and light fixtures. If you're doing this on a plain surface, then you can dodge all of this. Just be sure that you're taking measurements, marking out lines, and you can handle this just fine if you do have some things in your way you need to work around.
Feeling so small
Watch the clock ticking off the wall.
Now, once you've made it to the top of the wall, you've filled in all your boards. Remember, the outside spacing is not a big deal because we're going to be doing a trim around. Off camera, I went and filled in all my little brad nail holes. That way I had a nice, flat, consistent paint surface to paint on. This is a quick sanding. You don't need a big, expensive sander to do this. You could do it with hand sanding. Just wear a face mask because that dust is nasty. Now, I'm going to paint mine using my HVL pre-sprayer. That just stands for high volume, low pressure. I'll link this one down below. But you can also do this with a roller and a brush. It just takes a little bit more time. Now, I think this ended up taking 3 coats total to get everything covered. And thankfully, in my case, I was going to install new flooring after this. So getting it on the existing flooring, getting the paint down there wasn't a big deal. So I didn't have to spend a lot of time taping off. Now, what's going to make this look really professional is caulking all your lines. I used a combination of a caulk gun and a squeeze tube, just because the squeeze tube gives you a little bit more control for those tighter spaces, as well as paper towel and a cup of water. Dipping your finger in the cup of water and then running it along the caulk line gives you a nice smooth finish that looks professional grade. It's one of those little trade secrets that really takes your project to the next level. So be sure to include some water when you're running those beads. And honestly, guys, after we finish running these beads, this project is done. Now, this is part of a full renovation, and there are several other videos, so be sure to go check my channel out. But for now, let's look at those reveals. Well, guys, there you have it. Just a couple of sheets of 1/4-inch plywood, a little bit of construction adhesive, and a brad nailer. And you can have a gorgeous accented ShipLap wall without spending hundreds upon hundreds of dollars. Those long tongue and groove boards are so expensive, and there's no reason to pay for those when you can have the same look for a fraction of the cost. That's gonna do it for this week's video. If you like that tip, if you like this video, be sure to click the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. I'm gonna be sharing all the different processes I went through to bring this whole renovation to fruition, between the lighting, the mirrors, the vanity, the flooring. Everything you see here will be covered in additional videos because it would have been just too long to put it in one. So if you want to check those out, be sure to head over to my channel and you'll see links down below to catch all those different builds. That's gonna do it for this week's video. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, do all the things, and we'll see you in the next one.